Jill Leovy, Ghettoside, A True Story of Murder in America. In Ghettoside, A True Story of Murder in America, Jill Leovy takes an in-depth look at the startlingly high level of violence and unsolved murders in predominantly Black communities. The book delves into the historical and structural reasons behind the lack of a state monopoly on violence in these areas, and reveals how misguided police policies and alternate systems of justice contribute to this grim reality. Leovy explores the origins of this phenomenon and the potential solutions to make communities safer, by prioritizing homicide investigations, rebuilding trust with local communities, and delivering justice to victims and their families.
Unresolved Black homicides. Surprisingly, the majority of homicides involving Black male victims remain unsolved and underreported. The conviction rate for these cases is significantly lower compared to other demographics. During the early 1990s in Los Angeles, only 36% of Black murder perpetrators faced conviction, a fraction above the 30% rate recorded in Jim Crow-era Mississippi. This lower conviction rate exposes the disadvantage suffered by Black homicide victims. A Los Angeles Times investigation revealed that a killer of a Black or Hispanic individual was less likely to be convicted than one of a white person, and even if convicted, received less severe penalties. This pattern reflects a general societal and police indifference towards crimes against Black communities. The Los Angeles Police Department once acknowledged Black murders as NHI, no human involved, highlighting the dehumanizing perspective on these cases. Furthermore, when reported, Black murders are frequently skewed and labeled as gang violence, masking the human tragedy behind such incidents. Understanding the origins of this issue requires an exploration of historical and structural factors, with answers often contrary to expectations. State monopolies and violence. The concept of a state's monopoly on violence, as defined by sociologist Max Weber, is crucial for ensuring the rule of law and individual autonomy. Usually, the state exercises exclusive rights over legitimate force, and the police protect citizens, fostering a sense of safety. Unfortunately, poor Black communities in the United States historically lack this protective monopoly, dating back to the racism of the Reconstruction and Jim Crow eras. During those periods, safety for all citizens was disregarded. This disparity led to vigilantism, informal justice, and self-policing in Black communities. When Southern Black communities migrated to northern industrial cities in the early 1900s, conflicts arose with Northern police who aggressively patrolled Black neighborhoods. Major riots resulted in the 1960s, and ever since, skepticism towards bureaucratic justice has persisted in Black communities. Unraveling violence's alternate system. The absence of a state monopoly on violence within certain Black communities has led to the development of an alternate system of justice. This system, rooted in violence, prevails due to minimal law enforcement intervention. In the face of perceived personal threats, people often resort to violence rather than seeking legal solutions. This phenomenon results in homicides over seemingly trivial matters like unpaid debts or party crashers. The alternate justice system is driven by unwritten codes of conduct and loyalty, which further complicates law enforcement intervention. For instance, witnesses in South Central LA's Black community often refuse to testify due to a fear of being labeled as snitches and facing violent backlash. Consequently, this reluctance becomes a significant factor in the low conviction rates for homicides in communities like South Central. This observation reveals that high homicide rates and the presence of justice systems built around gangs are not the cause, but rather a consequence, of lawlessness. Misguided police policies. The high crime and low conviction rates in Black communities can be partly attributed to misguided police policies, which prioritize crime prevention over investigation. This approach, focusing on patrols and mass arrests, undervalues the important work of detectives and often leads to underfunded and understaffed investigative teams. As a result, homicides and serious crimes may go unsolved or inadequately pursued, further straining the already tense relationship between the police and Black communities. To improve the situation, a shift in focus toward solving crimes and building trust is necessary. One of the key contributors to the ongoing high crime rates and low conviction rates in Black communities lies in the misguided police policies dominating law enforcement strategies. Instead of prioritizing investigations, many U.S. police forces emphasize patrols, mass arrests, and other preventative measures. This is especially true in large urban police departments like the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, which views crime prevention as more effective than detective work, which is seen as merely reactive. While it's understandable that one would prefer to invest resources in preventing crimes rather than investigating them after the fact, this approach ultimately damages both the police and the communities they serve. By devaluing investigations, police departments minimize their efforts on this front, leaving detective units underfunded and understaffed. During periods of high crime rates, this has disastrous consequences and causes homicide investigations to be abandoned or improperly executed due to the lack of resources and personnel. Furthermore, the aggressive preventative measures commonly employed by police often breed mistrust within Black communities. By cracking down on minor crimes like marijuana possession and shoplifting but failing to effectively address more serious threats like murder and violence, the police create the perception that they don't care for people of color. This leads to an erosion of trust and cooperation between the community and law enforcement, perpetuating the cycle of crime and inadequate response. To break free from this cycle, it's essential to prioritize crime solving and trust building within these communities. Only by reevaluating and reorienting police policies can law enforcement hope to make a meaningful change in addressing the high crime rates in Black communities. Solving murders, rebuilding trust. Diminishing the homicide epidemic in underprivileged Black communities is achievable through the restoration of the state's monopoly on violence. Key to this is the police's diligent resolution of murder cases. Murders in shadow justice systems can often be solved by applying the right pressure, as communities are usually aware of the details, sharing information via networks like Southeast Los Angeles's Ghetto Information Network, GIN. Success in solving homicides lies in ensuring witnesses' safety and fostering trust in law enforcement. As a byproduct, clearing murder cases shows that victims' lives matter regardless of their race, bridging the gap between police and local communities. Although it's challenging to address the overzealous policing and high incarceration rates of Black men, prioritizing justice can be the catalyst for a much-needed change in law enforcement's approach.
Leovy's Ghettoside provides readers with a critical understanding of the high rates of unsolved murders and violence in Black communities, and explains how the lack of a state monopoly on violence has led to the emergence of informal justice systems and mistrust between these communities and law enforcement. Through the book, we come to realize that prioritizing crime prevention over solving murder cases ultimately does more harm than good. In order to establish peace in these areas and regain the trust of local communities, law enforcement must conduct thorough investigations, solve homicides, and demonstrate that all lives are valued and protected, regardless of race.